Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Girl Gone Crypto. A really big topic this week has been YouTube censorship, as many crypto YouTubers have been hit with violations, had their videos removed, and even received suspensions. So now a lot of these people have gotten their videos restored, but it's still a really scary topic that a lot of content creators are wondering if maybe this is just the beginning. So I have an awesome guest here on the show today, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media, to join us today and talk about some of these issues. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, unfortunately, you are no stranger to the world of censorship, which is why I wanted to have you on to talk about your experiences dealing with these kinds of issues on YouTube. So, now before we jump into talking about all of this, can you just give us a really brief overview of what World Alternative Media is and what kind of videos you guys are making there?
Yeah, we basically try to interview people on various subjects. That's a great thing about the word media, is it covers basically anything that has to do with video or audio. We're trying to create an alternative viewpoint to all of the fear mongering from both the mainstream media and a lot of alternative medias as well, because we find there are more solutions and problems out there. We like to talk about the news, say the things that should scare people, and then tell people here are the things you can do about it in order to survive this issue. And so we do documentaries, we talk about economics a lot, the markets, we talk about politics or apolitics or whatever you want to call it, confront some politicians here and there, fun stuff, whatever we feel is something that we need to get out there, pump out there to the public that week. We try to get videos out basically every single day on a variety of topics.
Now, on your YouTube channel, it's about 135,000 subscribers, right?
Yeah, well, 136,000. Okay. It's been, I say that because we've been frozen at that for I don't know how many months now, which we'll go into shortly. But yeah, we got about 136,000.
So how long ago did you start seeing some of this YouTube censorship? And then what did it look like? Like, did you have videos that got taken down? Did you get suspended? Or have you more generally just seen a lot of shadow banning where people just aren't even seeing your content anymore? So maybe tell us a little bit about what that has looked like.
Well, as long as I've been on YouTube, I've seen some form of censorship to some extent. I should note that I first got on YouTube when YouTube was on the 6th page of Google when you searched up streaming video websites.
Wow.
I mean, I've been on there since it was nothing. There's barely any videos on it. I used to like to produce films and stuff like that, so I wanted to, even at the age of like 11, I wanted to post videos and see where it goes online. Around 2009, things started to take a turn for the worst. Occasionally you'd see super controversial videos get taken down, and often they were videos that probably most people wouldn't really object to being taken down, but it's a slippery slope. And I remember there was a heyday on YouTube where you could basically look up literally anything and find it, or like 50 varieties or 50 variations of that very thing. And then as time went on, I saw a few channels get taken down here and there for really extreme content, and it started to slowly move its way up to less extreme content. And I would say that one of the first times I really saw this in action for myself personally was I interviewed Juanita Broderick years ago. I was one of the first people in, I think, about a decade to interview her. Wow. She had accused Bill Clinton of some pretty terrible things back in the 70s. And when I interviewed her, I thought, well, this is good. Let's get this news out. And again, this is beginning of 2016 or so. And I put out the content, and within 24 hours, the video got 22,301 views.
Wow.
Now, it froze for a week, didn't move. And then I think it was Paul Joseph Watson or something said it. And by the way, I should mention, Donald Trump shared this video. The Tea Party shared this video. What? Not people that I associate with, but nonetheless, lots of really big names. Front page of Drudge Report, main story. And again, 22,301 views. Then about a couple weeks later, Paul Joseph Watson mentioned it, and it jumped from 22,301 to 44,602 views, exactly double, froze there for a year. And I was like, that is obviously not natural. So as time went by, I saw this start to happen more and more. I'd see my views ticking down as my subscriptions went up, but I'd always seem to get around it somehow, and my subscribers would explode, and I would get a bunch of views, and I would get around whatever attempted algorithmic changes they would make. Well, that all changed. Most of the change happened actually around the beginning of 2019. So in January of 2019, I was the fastest growing independent media in the world. By February, I did an interview, I think it was with like David Icke or something, instant shadow banning. My videos went from an average of 40,000 views per video down to maybe 4,000 views per video. And it just never recovered from there. In fact, it's only gotten worse. YouTube has cut down my viewership 80% since February. They've cut down my monetization 90% since February. And I should note that, I make a living off of this, and I was stupidly dependent in a lot of ways on YouTube. But, Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, after years of saying that she didn't shadow ban, recently came out about 3-4 weeks ago saying, we've cut down views on controversial content by 70%. So that's just a 10% difference from what I've been saying all year. So all these things are coming to fruition to the point where they're just outwardly admitting that they're doing this kind of stuff. And it's getting worse by the day.
So one of the things you just mentioned was that up until that point, you'd been like fairly dependent on YouTube. And so what advice would you have for content creators that are maybe looking at this and thinking, oh man, I gotta shift. I gotta start thinking about how I can safeguard against this in the future. So are you using different types of platforms? Are you directing people to your website? Like, how have you evolved, and what kind of advice would you have for other content creators?
Well, first of all, I'd like to note that I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit terrified about what comes next, because it's a lot of our livelihoods. And we depend so much on viewership, the support of audiences. And another number one thing, in my opinion, the number one thing I'm dependent on right now is getting people off of things like YouTube. We should still produce for YouTube, reach people on YouTube to get them over to other places. But I've been directing people to Flote.app, Flote.app, Bitchute. Flote's still in beta, but they are really working hard and really creating an amazing platform. Bitchute has had a lot of glitches for a lot of years, and I think they're really starting to get a move on here because they see people moving in their direction. Because as of recently, we've seen all these things happen, including COPPA legislation, for example, which has been around since the 90s. But this COPPA legislation carried over to YouTube after they settled a fine for somewhere around $170 million, which was huge. And it was really a wake-up call for YouTube in a lot of ways. And instead of like admitting that they made a mistake, they came after their own creators, the people that made them big. So basically for years they've said, don't do edgy content or we'll demonetize you. Now they're saying also don't do family friendly content. And people are like, what is this? This doesn't even make sense. So with that, they've come out with this new stuff in YouTube Studio that says, if your videos are made for kids, select it's made for kids. But then if you do that, you won't get advertising. You won't be suggested in content anymore. Which is already bad enough for Wham, because we went from 72% of our views coming from suggested content to only 1.2% today. And then if you select that it isn't for kids, the FTC could arbitrarily decide that kids could technically watch that content because there's not enough swears or whatever in it, and they could come after you with a fine for over $42,000 per video. So, I mean, that's just out of this world ridiculous. Anyone could see that. And so that was a big step in the wrong direction. And then we see with the new, terms of services that came out on December 10th, that they will also be going after people for bullying. But by bullying, that can include criticizing a public figure. So that kind of makes things a little bit, vague, to say the least. And a lot of channels are getting affected. Now with the recent crypto purge, obviously we see all these channels get attacked from all these angles. And on Christmas, which is like the grinchiest thing you could possibly do, I know all these content creator friends of mine are like, I don't think I can feed my family anymore. And it's like, this is a wake-up call that's horrible in so many ways, but this is a wake-up call about exactly why we need to get to these other platforms. Sure, YouTube put up some of these channels and they let some people go, but when they said that it was a mistake, because YouTube recently said, oh, this was all a mistake.
Right.
Let me make this entirely clear. Make no mistake, this was not a mistake. This was entirely is something that has been planned for a while. They've been cracking down slowly but surely, and going into the next decade and into the next election, they're doing whatever they can to stifle anything that's any way alternative to the mainstream. And they prop up Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, all the big medias against us. So make no mistake, this was not a mistake. And crypto creators, the most innovative people, some of the most innovative people out there, it's the stupidest thing ever, because obviously they're going to move away and create new, better alternatives. And I see a lot of people moving to Flote.app. I see a lot of people moving to BitChute. And this is exactly why we need to spread this awareness, because they basically, YouTube shooting themselves in the foot and saying, you know what? We don't care about the creators. We also don't care about the money, apparently, because this just wipes out their own revenue. And crypto creators of all people, they're going to be like, okay, well, what can we fix, or what can we create to fix this problem? And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So Flote.app, I think, is the number one thing that people should move to. And I've been saying it's kind of like I've been kind of like a clock, just repeating at least once or twice a day, just saying, Flote is a replacement to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon all in one, with encrypted messaging, monetization, and super chats on their live streams. I mean, why wouldn't people spend 10 seconds signing up?
Yeah, and I am also on Flote.app. So if you guys want to come join us and hang out with us there, it's definitely a great platform. And like you said, it's in beta, but they definitely continue to add more and more features, which is awesome. So one thing I wanted to chat about that you just said, because I feel like there's a lot of debate right now in crypto Twitter about this, where YouTube came back saying, oh, it was a mistake. And it's like, really? After you took down that many videos, you came back? Like, why would they do that? Why would they suspend all those people and then just 2 or 3 days later take it back? Were they just kind of testing the waters to see what the reaction is? Or what are your thoughts on why they did it how they did it?
I have so many friends in the crypto world that make crypto content that have this weird sense of security, and I had it too years ago when it first started happening to me. Because I've seen videos just randomly deleted and no dispute process, and saying I was inciting violence by talking to an architect in one video, like stupid stuff like that. There's a lot of false sense of security, and YouTube, as I said, it was a mistake. Some people are saying, well, maybe it was the algorithm. The algorithm, that is an algorithm, guys. YouTube has a terrible algorithm. They change it more than 400 times a year, which is mostly just like young rookies at YouTube that are trying to like make a name for themselves by tweaking something that doesn't need to be tweaked. But with that said, algorithm isn't going to selectively take down all of these channels, leave other ones up. And that's not how that works. If it was really the algorithm, only a couple channels would have been taken down, or all of the channels that even have the words crypto in it. There were people, human beings, clicking buttons and making this happen. And it was not a mistake. There are people reviewing this stuff, maybe not very well, but there are people reviewing this stuff that are deciding or making decisions with a group of other people to do this. I've talked with YouTube one-on-one. I have a channel over 100,000 subscribers, which has been frozen forever, but I have a channel over 100,000 subscribers where it allows you a chat box where you're able to send live chats to YouTube, and you're able to talk back and forth with people. And most of them have absolutely no idea what's going on, but they can confirm that there are groups of people sitting at a table that make those decisions.
Wow.
They've told me that multiple times, because I make sure to complain every time I see anything happen on YouTube. I go to YouTube, I complain about them. Sometimes I do something about it, but for the most part, they don't. Most of the people on YouTube and on Twitter, where Twitter, by the way, just put out new terms of services that says that they can hide the visibility of controversial content, whatever they deem controversial content. It's in their own terms of services. Crypto Twitter, crypto YouTube, crypto Facebook. We've been through a lot over the last couple of years. We've seen ads banned. In fact, the Ethereum, one of the number one Ethereum wallets in the world, Consensus, was just banned by Google within the last, I think, 2 days. This is going to only get worse. And we saw them test the water with someone like Alex Jones. He's one of the most popular people in alternative media, whatever you want to call him. It doesn't matter if you like him or not. He was one of the top people. He was the top person in alternative media. When they took him down and they saw that nothing was really done about it, people didn't really throw that much of a fuss, and people kept using the platform, they knew that, well, let's continue going. Let's take this guy down, this guy, and now they're just going after everyone. And it will only get worse in 2020. But I'm optimistic long term, but in that transition stage between YouTube and entities like Flote and BitChute and DLive, etc., and Steam, I guess. I mean, the transition is going to be very difficult, and we're going to need audiences to really get on their feet and go over to these platforms, because we don't exist without the audience. So it really does come down to the audience.
So, on a kind of more practical level, you mentioned the dispute process. So, let's say someone is watching this and they had a strike on their video that they really don't think should be there. I mean, obviously, we never think there should be strikes on our videos, but let's say it's like a really basic, like Bitcoin 101. They're like, this is not harming anyone. This is fully educational. This is not sponsored content. Like, like let's say that they really want to try to dispute it. What would that process look like, especially if they have less than 100,000 followers and they don't have that direct chat? Like, is it even worth trying? How often do you actually win against that? Like, what's your experience been?
You're up against robots most of the time. If you're under a certain amount of viewership, you can send it for manual review if it's monetization. But otherwise, the dispute process is incredibly difficult, and it often takes you getting your audience, whatever audience you are able to reach at that point, on Twitter and other platforms, to send Team YouTube a message. I mean, honestly, the dispute process is absolutely horrible. And YouTube actually admits that their dispute process is terrible. They say there's too many people, there's too many, and it's like, okay, well, it's the same thing as when they say, we can't collect children's data, so we're just going to fine all these channels $42,000 each. Well, then stop collecting everyone's data and sending it to China then. Well, in the same case here, it's like, well, stop tweaking everything and creating an algorithm that's destructive to so many people if you don't want all these people to be trying to dispute this problem. I mean, you create the problem, stop creating the problem, and you won't have to come in as a solution. So, I mean, they complain about their own process. They say there's too much going on, they can't do it. And it's like, but you are making it that difficult. You're being more difficult on yourself and on your shareholders and on the people that make your platform work. So the people under a certain amount of viewership, when it comes to disputing the process, it's almost impossible. I've seen in some cases 0 options to dispute. It happened to me. I was in Spain earlier this year, and in the middle of, well, during the early morning, when it was about 2 a.m. back at home, they sent me an email for the first time, never saying that there was any video that was in review, but for the first time at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. Pacific time, they sent me this email saying your video has been removed for inciting violence and harm. Now, I would never have seen that email if I was in North America. Luckily, I was in Europe, and I just happened to see it because I was awake at that time. Otherwise, it would have been covered up by other messages. So I saw it, and I'm like, wait, what's going on? I send all these messages. I spent an entire day trying to get a hold of YouTube, and after a while, they're like, yeah, that doesn't seem right, but we have a team that confirms these things, so they're usually correct in their judgment. Wow. Eventually, I got the video put back up, but if I didn't say anything, I would have never noticed. I've seen videos disappear for years. The number of videos ticked down. No idea which video disappeared. No notification on it. So we have to get used to that and realize, first of all, very little process to do anything. Second of all, it doesn't matter. YouTube's old guard. It's dying off fast. I've been on there since the first days, and I believe we're in the last days. It's never been worse. And I've been saying it's never been worse for years, every single week. So get on the other platforms, folks. I don't know what else it takes really at this point to really get people to realize that we are up against a rock and a hard place, and the only way out is to go around that rock or that hard place and go to another platform that isn't going to censor you, that isn't going to try to ruin you. I mean, there's people that have to feed their families that can't make a living right now because they were dependent on YouTube, and it's sick. But we have to come up with solutions, and that's one of the great things about this community is we always do come up with solutions.
So, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with us. This has been very insightful, and I think a lot of people that have channels that are worried about this are going to find what you said to be helpful, just to get that inside perspective of someone who's been dealing with this for a long time. So where can people find you online, and how can they find World Alternative Media?
My gut instinct is to be like YouTube, okay. So I am on YouTube at World Alternative Media. I still post there. I think it's good to get people on board these other platforms. And honestly, it's my last little bit of revenue that I can get out of this behemoth, this censorship giant, monopoly on information. But I'm also on Flote.app and at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at WAM, WAM. And we're on Minds, we're on BitChute, we're on all the different platforms. So you guys can find us there, Instagram, basically everything. You have to, if I'm going to leave people with one last piece of advice, back yourself up on literally everything and collect emails like it's the 1990s, because you want to be able to reach the people that want to see your content, or they'll just never see you again and you're going to fade in relevance rather quickly. So do whatever you can to back yourself up now. And if you don't do it now, then forever hold your peace, because you're going to be wiped from the pages of history like a modern day book burning, and that we cannot allow that to happen.
A freaking men. Back up your content, collect email addresses so you can directly communicate with your audience when these platforms shut you down. Josh, thank you so much for coming on and chatting, and we'll leave links to all of those social handles below so that you guys can find him. And don't forget to also check out Patreon as well to help support World Alternative Media. And you've got Patreon or a Patreon style thing on Flote as well. So support alternative media. And thanks again, Josh, so much.
Thanks, Leah.